The sky over Kalen 3 cracked apart like torn fabric as Rayan's shuttle took its final nosedive. The controls sparked, gravity alarms screamed, and Rayan barely managed to strap himself in before impact. Metal screeched as the transport tore through jungle canopy and slammed into the mud with a final, bone-jarring crunch. He woke to smoke, pain, and silence. Dragging himself out of the wreckage, his arm limp and ribs aching, he surveyed the destruction. Trees bent in unnatural shapes, embers drifting through the air like fireflies. His gear pack was half melted, the AI relay fried. No backup. No signal. Just a fractured planet under a blood-red sun. Rayan stumbled through the debris for supplies, only to hear a faint rasp of breath from the tree-ling. Not a creature, too slow. Too pained. Cautiously, sidearm raised, he found her. Slumped against the scorched hull of a broken escape pod was a woman, or something close. Orange fur matted with blood streaked down her arm. Her long vulpine ears flicked toward him, and green eyes pierced the smoke between them. "Touch me, and I swear I'll gut you," she hissed. Rayan didn't lower his gun. But he didn't pull the trigger either. "I'm a medic," he said, voice steady despite his pounding heart. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be bleeding out alone." The vulpine's lips curled, exposing sharp canines. "Fine. But you touch my tail and I'll chew your face off." He dropped to one knee, ignoring her growl, and began sealing her wound. This wasn't the mission he trained for. But something told him it was the one that would change everything. Rayan's fingers moved quickly, but with care. He'd done this kind of field patching 100 times before, just never on a creature quite like her. The gash in her shoulder was deep, probably shrapnel, maybe from the same blast that had brought his shuttle down. Her breathing was sharp and shallow, pain held back by sheer grit. "Don't get any ideas," she said through clenched teeth as he sprayed antiseptic foam over the torn muscle. "Ideas are expensive," Rayan muttered. "I'm not here to buy trouble." Her ears twitched at that, but she didn't move away. She was unlike anything he'd seen. The orange fur along her jaw and neck shimmered when it caught the firelight, her features angular but elegant, with the kind of predatory grace that made him think of both nobility and danger. He'd seen aliens before, some elegant, some monstrous. But this one walked a fine line between both, and something told him that line was razor thin. "You've got shrapnel near the bone," he said, glancing up. "If I don't remove it, your arm's gone by sunrise." "You're lucky I'm too tired to kill you for saying that," she growled. "I'll take that as consent," Rayan said dryly, digging into his medkit. She hissed as he pulled the fragment free, blood welling hot between his fingers. He pressed gauze to the wound and sealed it with a biobond strip. Her breathing steadied, though her claws still twitched in the dirt. "You got a name?" he asked once he was done. She narrowed her eyes. "Naira. Rayan Voss," he said, easing back on his heels. "Field medic. Crashed about a click west of here." "Yeah," she muttered. "I saw the fireball." He looked around at the blackened forest. "Something hit us hard. But it wasn't just stray fire, was it?" Naira didn't answer right away. Her ears flattened, eyes turning wary. "You're not the only one being hunted." Rayan felt the weight of that. The silence pressed closer. The kind of silence that listened back. "So what now?" he asked, slinging the ruined medkit over his shoulder. Naira slowly stood, favoring her right side. She eyed him, her tail twitching once behind her. "You patched me up," she said. "Which means you're either stupid or decent." "Both," Rayan replied. "Depending on who's asking." She snorted. "Then let's move before they circle back. You saved me, Rayan Voss. Now you get to live long enough to regret it." He smirked. "That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me all week." Together, they vanished into the jungle smoke. They moved through the jungle in silence, the oppressive humidity pressing down like a blanket soaked in sweat. Ash still drifted from the upper canopy, the aftermath of the crash painting everything in muted reds and grays. Rayan kept one hand near his holster, the other cradling his ribs where a dull throb warned of bruising, or worse. Naira was fast, even with her injury. She didn't stumble, didn't complain, and barely rustled the undergrowth. Her tail, thick and furred with a slight curl at the tip, moved with precision, like a counterbalance, or a warning signal. Rayan had seen elite scouts move like her, but never with that kind of instinct. She wasn't just trained. She was born for this terrain. "You've done this before," he said finally, trying to cut through the quiet. Naira glanced back. "Hunted? Bled? Survived?" "Yeah." "Military?" Her ears flattened. "Something like that." He didn't press. "Not yet." The jungle thinned after half a kilometer, revealing a shallow ravine lined with wet stone and the charred bones of some alien predator. Naira crouched at the edge, sniffed the air, and motioned for him to stay low. Rayan dropped beside her. "What is it?" She pointed with one clawed finger. "Tracks. Not animal." He followed her gaze. The marks were faint, but unmistakable. Boot prints. Forceps fresh. Leading uphill, then circling back. Whoever left them had doubled their path. "Hunters," Naira said, her voice low. "Maybe sent for you. Maybe for me." Rayan studied the trail. They were checking wreckage paths. "They'll find bodies. Maybe wreckage. And they'll realize something survived." Naira stood. Her fur bristled, not from fear, but anticipation. "We need to disappear." "There's an old relay tower," Rayan said, thinking quickly. "About 3 clicks southeast. If the schematics I memorized are right, it's underground. Could buy us time." Naira gave him a sharp look. "You remember terrain maps?" "Photographic memory. It's why the brass kept me around." She considered that. Then nodded. "Fine. You lead. But if this gets us cornered, I'm eating your boots." Rayan smirked and started moving again. "I'll try not to make them too chewy." They slipped into the ravine and followed the dry stream bed east. The jungle hissed around them, full of heat and unseen eyes. But they weren't alone anymore. And whatever hunted them now, had their scent. The relay tower wasn't a tower anymore, just a half-buried steel husk beneath the twisted skeleton of an old canopy tree. Time and war had reduced the once functional uplink to a rusted mess, but if Rayan was right, its underground section might still hold power. Shelter. A place to breathe. "This is it?" Naira asked, eyeing the overgrowth skeptically. Her ears rotated, scanning for threats. "Only safe house in this quadrant," Rayan replied. "If you're not picky." He dropped to his knees beside a collapsed terminal and pried loose the rusted panel with a grunt. Beneath, a keypad blinked faintly, still drawing trickle charge from a backup cell. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered, pressing a sequence. The old hatch groaned like a dying beast, then popped open, revealing a narrow shaft leading down into darkness. Naira sniffed. "Smells like rot and batteries." Comforting. He dropped in first, sliding down the rungs with practiced ease. At the bottom, emergency strips lit up faintly under his boots, casting the corridor in a cold blue haze. Pipes hissed in the distance, leaking condensation that pooled along the metal floor. Naira landed beside him with barely a sound. Rayan led them through the narrow hall, past rows of shattered equipment, and half-collapsed doorways until they reached a small operations room. Monitors hung at odd angles, a med station overturned in one corner, but the generator hum was unmistakable. He powered on a terminal, fingers moving fast across cracked keys. Naira leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You really know what you're doing." "First rule of being a medic in the field," Rayan replied. "Always know the exits. Second rule, know how to patch up more than bodies." As power returned to the relay's local grid, low lights flickered on, revealing faded maps and interface logs. It was enough. Not paradise, but it meant they could breathe, regroup, plan. Naira slumped into a dented chair with a grunt, her tail curling around her leg. "I've had worse hideouts." Rayan tossed her a sealed ration bar and kept one for himself. Eat. We don't know when we'll get another chance. She bit into it like it owed her money. After a moment of silence, she said, You risked a lot dragging me here. You didn't have to. Rayan looked at her, really looked. The orange fur along her cheek was stained dark from dried blood. Her eyes, for all their predatory shine, held something else now, wariness, not hostility. I've seen too many left to die alone, he said quietly. Wasn't gonna make you one of them. Naira's gaze didn't soften, but her voice did. Then I guess I won't eat your boots. For now. Rayan gave a crooked smile and leaned back against the console. Outside, the jungle swayed with unseen life. Inside, two fugitives sat beneath the dirt, eating rations and pretending, just for a moment, that they weren't marked for death. Rayan didn't sleep much that night. He rarely did when danger felt this close, and something about the way Naira watched the shadows, tail flicking, ears twitching, told him she didn't either. By the time the generator settled into a low hum and the relay's backup systems blinked to life, the air felt less like a shelter and more like a grave with electricity. Still, Rayan worked the interface, scavenging logs from the last time this station had been used, decades ago, if the timestamps were accurate. Anything useful? Naira asked, still in her seat, sharpening one of her claw-tipped gauntlets with a chipped piece of metal. Maybe. There's a storage archive buried under sublayer 4. Security clearance locked me out. Can you break it? Rayan's brow furrowed. With time. Which we might not have. Naira stood and patted over, her movement lithe and fluid. She leaned over the console, her scent, ash, iron, and something faintly wild, settling in the air between them. Then let me try. He blinked. You know how to slice corporate systems? I know how to make them bleed, she said, claws dancing across the panel. The screen shifted, code flickering like fireflies before it spat out a soft chirp. Access granted? Rayan stared. Okay, what exactly were you before all this? Her eyes met his. Let's just say I broke out of the kennel before they could put me on a leash. The screen flickered again, this time pulling up a list of test logs. Rayan skimmed the entries. Subject status, delayed termination. Genetic matrix, hybridized strain, vulpine class. Behavioral response, unpredictable. Transferred to Pod 17 for deep stasis. His blood chilled. They ran Edifall protocols from this relay. Naira's jaw tightened. Edifall? I thought that was just a rumor. Rayan stood, the air in the room suddenly sharper. It's real. I read classified field briefings once. Edifall was a hybrid experiment designed to replace soldiers. No food needs, fast healing, heightened instincts. They made them too well. And then they buried them. Naira finished. Just like this place. Rayan moved fast, finding the map overlay and tracing the conduit lines. Pod 17. If it's still here, it's in the lab wing. 2 levels down. Naira's tail lashed once behind her. You think someone's still alive in it? Only one way to find out. They packed what they could, Rayan strapping his sidearm tight against his chest while Naira tied a fresh wrap around her healing arm. The relay station had been their refuge for a night. Now it was something else. A tomb. And maybe, just maybe, a cradle. The stairwell groaned under their weight as Rayan and Naira descended. Metal warped from heat, and age clung to the walls like dead skin. Every footstep echoed, and the further they went, the more the lights flickered and failed. Naira moved ahead of him, her form fluid and alert. Even injured, she moved like a weapon half unsheathed, every step placed with silent precision. Smells like rot, she muttered, nose wrinkling. And coolant. That's a good sign, Rayan said grimly, tapping his wrist pad. If the coolant system's still bleeding, the pods might still have backup power. The lower level opened into a narrow hall lined with broken glass chambers, pods, cracked and empty. Fluids had dried into rusty stains across the floor. Some of the stasis units were scorched, others shattered entirely. What remained inside wasn't recognizable. Naira stopped at one pod, its glass intact but heavily fogged. Rayan stepped beside her, wiping a clean arc into the frost. Inside lay a figure, small, humanoid, curled tightly around itself. Orange fur, slightly darker than Naira's. Long ears tucked back. Claws half extended. The breathing was faint, but there. A girl. "She's alive," Rayan whispered. Naira stared at the pod, unblinking. "This unit isn't like the others. She wasn't just a prototype. She was preserved." Rayan checked the panel. "Pod 17. Matches the logs. Name?" Rayan squinted at the ID tag. "Specimen L0Y5A. She's about 13. He muttered. "If the aging metrics are right." "Lisa," Naira whispered, almost to herself. "That's not a designation. That's a name." Rayan found the manual release, fingers trembling only slightly. "If this goes wrong." Naira's hand was already on her blade. "Then we handle it." He initiated the wake sequence. Fluid hissed out from the pod's base, followed by a pulse of cold steam. The girl's chest rose slowly, and her eyelids fluttered open, bright green eyes hazy and unfocused. She didn't scream. She blinked once. Twice. Then slowly looked from Rayan to Naira. "Mother?" she whispered. Naira's eyes widened, her breath catching. Rayan froze. Then the girl collapsed into unconsciousness, falling forward into Naira's arms. The room was still for a long moment. "I think we just became something bigger than fugitives," Rayan said softly. Naira didn't respond. She held the girl gently, protectively. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper more fragile than anything Rayan had heard from her. "I never had a daughter." Rayan looked at her. "But maybe, now you do." Rayan's pulse didn't settle, even after the pod had fully powered down. His instincts screamed, "Move now." They'd been underground too long, too loud, and too lucky. He slung his medpack over one shoulder, flicking his wrist pad to scan for uplink anomalies. The readings pulsed red. "We've got company," he muttered. Naira looked up sharply from where she crouched, cradling the unconscious girl in her arms. "How close?" "Not visual yet. But a relay ping was triggered. Someone's listening." Naira rose, fluid and feral. "Then we disappear." Rayan nodded, already at the console, stripping out the pod's remaining data core. If Edithfall had sent kill teams before this, Lisa was the kind of prize they wouldn't let slip. She wasn't just proof of what Edithfall had done. She was evidence. Naira secured the girl against her chest with scavenged harness straps. Despite the strain in her healing shoulder, she moved without complaint, fur bristling, breath measured. There was a protectiveness to her now, fierce and unmistakable. As they reached the upper stairwell, a distant vibration tickled Rayan's boots. Then a thud. Another. Heavy. Rhythmic. He froze. Transport dropship. Low altitude. Naira's claws flexed. "They're already here." Rayan yanked open the old service duct, barely wide enough for a grown man. "Through here. It leads into the ridge forest." Naira didn't hesitate. She moved into the darkness with Lisa pressed to her chest, her body coiled like a spring, every sense on edge. Rayan followed, sealing the grate behind them with a plasma rivet. As they crawled, the air thinned and the duct sloped upward, coated in grime and age. Somewhere above, the station groaned under pressure, boots on metal, voices barking in filtered tones. They emerged behind a natural stone outcrop just as the first drone hummed overhead. Rayan pressed low, throwing his jacket over Lisa to muffle her shallow breathing. The drone paused, scanning. Naira didn't breathe. Rayan gripped his pistol, safety off. Then it moved on. They lay still for nearly 5 minutes, hearts pounding, ears straining, until finally the sky quieted again. "Secondary fallback?" Naira asked in a whisper. Rayan pointed. "Half-click east. There's a moss cave near the river fork. Covered, narrow entrance. Should mask heat signatures." Naira nodded once and they ran, Rayan slightly behind, Naira gliding through brush like a flame through grass. Behind them, the relay station exploded. The shockwave knocked them to their knees, the heat licking their backs. Rayan looked up, coughing. They weren't here to recover her. Naira's eyes burned. They came to erase her. Rayan helped her up. Then we'd protect her. In the distance, the jungle burned. But ahead, just a sliver of safety waited. And they ran toward it. The moss cave was barely more than a hollow between slabs of volcanic rock, carpeted in tangled vines and slick with condensation. But it was shielded from aerial view, and the jagged ceiling scrambled scanning waves. As far as Rayan was concerned, it was a palace. Naira laid Lisa down on a patch of soft moss, gently adjusting the straps around her chest and brushing damp fur from her face. The girl's breaths were thin, shallow, but steady. Rayan knelt beside them, scanning Lisa's vitals with his cracked field monitor. Heart rate stable. But her neural activity is off the charts. Stasis withdrawal? Naira asked, her voice low, cautious. Maybe, Rayan muttered. Or maybe she was never supposed to wake up. Naira growled at that deep in her throat. She was alive. That's all that matters now. Rayan nodded slowly, but his mind raced. If Lisa was an Edifall beta model, grown, tested, stored and then forgotten, then her entire existence was a secret buried by the same people now trying to wipe them all off the map. And secrets like her didn't stay hidden forever. As if sensing the weight of their thoughts, Lisa stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and she sat up far too quickly. Easy, Rayan started, but Naira reached out and steadied the girl before she could fall back. Lisa blinked. Her emerald eyes fixed on Naira with fierce, confused intensity. You're not the technician. No, Naira said softly. You remember being inside? Dark, Lisa whispered. No time. Just dreams. What kind of dreams? Rayan asked gently. Lisa turned to him. Fire. Pain. Then voices. A tall man who called me a mistake. A room with too many mirrors. Rayan felt a chill crawl down his spine. Naira tensed beside him. The girl hugged her knees to her chest. I wasn't supposed to wake up, was I? Rayan knelt beside her. Maybe not. But you did. And that means something. Naira's hand slid into the girl's, surprisingly delicate for someone so used to wielding blades. You're not alone anymore. Lisa looked between them, silent for a beat. Then, you're not afraid of me? Rayan offered a tired smile. Fear doesn't stop me from doing what's right. Naira tilted her head. Besides, I'm scarier. Lisa gave a faint laugh, brief and broken, but real. Outside, the jungle hissed and crackled under distant flame. But inside the cave, something fragile had formed. Not safety. Not yet. But trust. And trust, Rayan thought, was the one thing they could still build. Morning, or what passed for it on Kalen 3, crept in through the cracks in the cave ceiling, painting thin golden lines across the stone. Rayan had been awake for hours, unable to rest with the pressure of the relay explosion still lingering in his bones. He'd rigged a motion sensor at the cave's mouth, its blinking LED covered with a leaf and his own cautious prayer. Beside him, Lisa slept, curled against Naira like a fox cub, her breast soft, fingers twitching with dreams. Naira had stayed awake most of the night, watchful and tense, but now even she rested, her back against the wall, tail draped protectively around the girl. Rayan sat cross-legged, scanning his datapad again, trying to sort what little they'd extracted from the Edenfall files. It was mostly corrupted logs, but some test headers still made his skin crawl. Neurografting successful. Subject retained learned motor control during REM phase. Emotional responses suppressed post-trigger. Viability remains inconsistent. Begin adaptation stress tests. Observe for resilience at 300% gravity threshold. He didn't know what kind of people could write reports like that. And he didn't want to. A soft noise broke his thoughts. A whimper. Then a gasp. He turned fast. Lisa sat upright, trembling, not in fear, but in overload. Her eyes glowed faintly, flickering like twin green torches, and the moss beneath her hands began to curl and brown. Hey, he said gently, kneeling beside her. Lisa, breathe. You're safe. Naira snapped awake instantly, already half crouched in a protective stance. What's happening? I don't know, Rayan said. Her biometrics just spiked. Your response like she's sinking to something. Lisa shook, clutching her temples. It's loud. Too loud. What is? Naira asked, moving to her side. Everything, Lisa whispered. The trees. The dirt. The heat. I can feel it. It's inside me. Rayan's eyes widened. She's sensing the environment. Reading it. She's adapting to it, Naira said slowly, watching the moss continue to die where Lisa's palms rested. Or rewriting it. Lisa looked at her, face pale but focused now. I don't want to hurt it. It won't stop talking to me. Rayan took a slow breath. They made you to survive any world, didn't they? Lisa nodded once. I don't think they understood what that meant. Rayan reached for her hand, letting it rest over his palm. You're not alone anymore. We'll help you figure this out, together. Naira added, voice firm and low. And anyone who comes to take you again? We'll show them just how dangerous a mistake that is. Lisa's glow faded, and her body relaxed. She leaned into Naira's side, drained but calm. Rayan watched her, his jaw tight. They had no idea what she was truly capable of. But whatever it was, they would make sure it stayed hers. They left the cave just after midday, when the heat was thickest and most drones switched to standby to avoid thermal overload. Rayan led the way, machete in hand, slashing through the dense foliage. Naira followed at his back, Lisa cradled on her hip, wrapped in a cloth sling fashioned from old gear straps and Rayan's torn jacket. The jungle seemed different. The air shimmered slightly where it shouldn't, and every time Rayan cut a vine or disturbed a root, Lisa would flinch. Not visibly, but enough for Naira to feel it, and for Rayan to start noticing a pattern. She's doing something, Naira said softly, walking beside him now. To the ground. To the plants. Rayan slowed. Lisa, can you feel it again? The girl blinked at him, her green eyes wide and clear. It's quiet now. But it listens when I breathe. Rayan looked at her gently. Do you want it to stop? Lisa's voice was small. I don't know how. That was when the trees started to move. Not violently. Not like in the old horror stories. But gradually, like the forest itself was adjusting, reorienting around them. Branches lifted just slightly, heavy roots slithered aside through the soil, and the oppressive heat broke into a soft breeze as the canopy parted above. Rayan stopped dead in his tracks. Tell me I'm not hallucinating, he muttered. Naira's tail flicked, eyes sharp. I see it too. Lisa leaned her head against Naira's shoulder. It doesn't want to hurt you. The forest doesn't? Rayan asked. No, she said simply. It knows I'm not the enemy. Rayan looked around, struggling to process what he was seeing. Every military briefing he'd ever sat through had hammered the same point. Edith-Fall hybrids were adaptive, strong, fast, but not connected. Not like this. Not altering the environment around them with nothing but presence. They pushed forward, the jungle parting gently, creating a narrow path down toward the ravine's edge. Vines recoiled from Rayan's boots. Even the insects quieted. By the time they reached the waterfall, the terrain had shifted completely. Was this here before? Naira asked, staring at the misty basin below. Rayan shook his head. No. This whole ridge was a deadfall zone. It wasn't even mapped as safe terrain. Lisa stirred again, peeking up. It's hiding us. So they can't hear. Rayan went still. It? The world? She said. Naira exhaled slowly. She's sinking with the planet. Rayan looked over the ridge, sweat glistening on his neck. They're going to come back harder when they can't find us. They'll bring more than guns next time, Naira said. Rayan nodded grimly. Then we need to stop thinking like prey. Lisa pressed her forehead to Naira's shoulder and whispered, I can help. Rayan met Naira's eyes. For the first time, he believed it. By dusk, the edge of the jungle gave way to rocky terrain. The soft soil and creeping roots turned to shale and scattered debris, and the distant sound of insects was replaced by a mechanical hum, so faint Rayan almost didn't notice it. He crouched low behind a ridge and raised his binoculars. Power signatures, he muttered. Faint. Might be geothermal. Naira peered over his shoulder, her orange fur catching the amber light of the setting sun. There. Left slope. Metal glint. He saw it then, half buried among the rubble and stone, a broken antenna sticking up like a rusted bone. Further down the slope, he made out the curve of a crashed hull, long since scavenged and overtaken by moss and fungus. Old smuggler vessel, he said. Models pre-corporate war. You think it still runs? No, he said. But if it's drawing power, there might be a relay. Maybe even a transmitter. Naira adjusted Lisa on her back. The girl was half asleep again, small arms wrapped around Naira's neck. Let's go before whatever's using that power decides to check their perimeter. They descended carefully, boots crunching loose gravel and scorched glass. The wreckage was spread across the hill like a frozen explosion. Cargo crates burst open decades ago, blackened skeletons of weapon racks and oxygen tanks scattered among the twisted metal. Rayan swept the site with a motion scanner. No signals. It's cold. Naira kicked open a rusted panel and gestured. Entrance here. They ducked inside the remains of the main cargo hold. Inside, shadows clung to the corners, but the power hum was louder. A backup generator, ancient, but still alive. Rayan followed the sound, trailing fingers along exposed wiring until they reached the remains of a calm suite sealed in a reinforced nook. Intact, he muttered, kneeling. Give me 5 minutes. While he worked, Naira laid Lisa down beside an old crate, checking her pulse. The girl opened one eye and whispered, Are we safe? For now, Naira answered, brushing a hand over her head. Don't get used to it. Rayan let the panel spark once before slamming a bypass cable into place. The screen flared. Static, then a flickering terminal window. Local systems only. No long-range uplink. But that wasn't what caught his attention. There was a message already on screen. Old. Timestamped 6 years ago. To any surviving Edafall units, do not return to corridor stations. Eden 9 is lost. Final evac routes encrypted in Vault Node. They are hunting you. Trust no corporate. RK. Rayan read it twice, heart pounding. Naira, there's a location here. Coordinates. It could be a safe house. Naira stepped up behind him, eyes narrowing. Or a trap. Yeah, Rayan admitted. But if it's real, it's off-world. Naira looked down at Lisa. Then back at him. Then we find a way off this rock. Outside, the wind picked up, stirring ash across the ruined valley. Inside, they had hope. And that was more than they'd had yesterday. Rayan hunched over the console, sweat glistening down his temples as his fingers danced over ancient keys. The smuggler beacon interface was pre-standard, older than anything he'd trained on, full of brittle circuits and unfamiliar glyphs. But he'd seen enough makeshift rigs in the field to piece it together. This beacon still has a signal module, he muttered, adjusting a broken copper wire with tweezers. Low range, but if someone's lurking on the edge of the system, they'll hear us. Naira stood at the cargo bay entrance, tail swaying, eyes sharp on the surrounding terrain. And if they're Edafall loyalists? Then they come to kill us, Rayan replied without missing a beat. But at least they come. Beside them, Lisa crouched quietly near the console. Her eyes glowed faintly again, but not with fear. Curiosity shimmered in her every breath. I can help, she said, her voice small. Rayan looked up. How? She reached toward the relay cables and touched the metal, not forcefully, but gently, like she was listening to it. The generator buzzed. Then settled. The static on the screen cleared into clean lines. What the hell? Rayan whispered. You just stabilized the pulse rate. I told you it listens when I breathe, Lisa murmured. Naira stepped back inside, eyes flicking between them. Get it out fast. No message, no ID. Just the ping. Rayan keyed in a tight burst. No coordinates, just an encrypted tone loop with a random signal trail. It wouldn't say where they were, but it would be enough for any ship scanning for oddities to lock in on. The beacon lit up with a low-frequency chime, barely audible, but enough to mean everything. We wait, Rayan said, collapsing against the bulkhead. Naira's expression didn't change, but her ears shifted back slightly. How long? He shrugged. Could be hours. Could be days. Depends who's listening. Lisa sat between them, hands folded in her lap. They'll hear it. Someone will. Rayan nodded. Let's just hope it's someone who doesn't want to dissect us. They waited. Night fell slowly, the jungle outside whispering like it remembered voices from long ago. Rayan tried not to think about the shadows moving between the trees. Tried not to imagine eyes watching. Waiting. The silence dragged. Then, at the edge of dawn, a soft hum rolled across the sky. Naira stood instantly, her claws flexing. Rayan grabbed his scope and dashed to the shattered hull, scanning the heavens. A ship. No markings. Sleek. Slow descent. Contact, he breathed. One shuttle. Could be a traitor. Could be a ghost. Naira glanced at him, her voice low and flat. If they touch her, they die. Rayan didn't argue. They grabbed their gear, strapped Lisa between them, and moved into position. One way or another, that ship was going to change everything. The ship touched down on a rise beyond the smuggler wreck, its silent thrusters kicking up ash and leaf fragments in slow cyclones. No insignia. No running lights. Just matte black plating and an unusually smooth hull design, no visible seams, no entry markings. It didn't land so much as settle, like a beast crouching before a pounce. Rayan crouched beside Naira behind a rusted engine coil, his eyes locked on the landing ramp as it lowered with a slow hiss. He adjusted the rifle across his back and glanced at her. You see any insignia? No, Naira muttered, her fur bristling. But it smells corporate. Even without the branding. Lisa stood between them, peeking over the edge of the coil. She tilted her head. I don't think they're here to hurt us. Rayan looked at her sharply. How do you know? I don't, she whispered. But I don't feel afraid. The first figure stepped off the ramp, tall, lean, wrapped in a thin combat cloak that shimmered faintly like reactive camo. Their helmet hid their face, but the stance was casual, too casual. Travelers, the voice called, neutral and calm, amplified slightly. You're transmitting from a buried pre-war beacon. That alone is worth a conversation. Rayan stepped up slowly, keeping a hand near his sidearm. We didn't expect company. Not many do, the figure said. I go by Caldron. Freelance. Heard your ping, followed the ghost trail. Now I'm wondering what you're running from. Naira emerged beside Rayan, claws half-drawn, stance guarded. Ask less. Say why you're here. Caldron raised both hands slightly. Rescue's not on my resume. But I'm not in the business of turning in ghosts either. Rayan narrowed his eyes. So what is your business? Caldron paused. Then reached up and unlatched his helmet, pulling it free to reveal a gaunt, sharp-boned face. Gray skin, cybernetic lenses over both eyes. Human, but altered. Information, he said. And knowing when something exceptional falls off a corporate ledger. He looked directly at Lisa now, and though his expression remained flat, Rayan didn't miss the twitch of his jaw. You know what she is, Naira said coldly. I know what they made her to be, Caldron replied. And I know no one's supposed to be carrying a living Edenfall hybrid through Kalen 3's kill zones. Rayan stepped forward, voice steel. We didn't come looking for trouble. But we found a girl locked in a forgotten hell, and we're not giving her back to the bastards who buried her there. Caldron considered him for a long moment. Then we may have something in common, he said at last. Because I used to work for those bastards. Rayan's eyes narrowed. And now? I sell to the ones who hate them most. Naira's claws relaxed a fraction. Caldron gestured back toward the ship. I can get you off this planet. But you'd better be sure. Once we leave orbit, there's no crawling back into the mud. Rayan looked at Naira. Naira looked at Lisa. The girl simply nodded. Rayan exhaled. Then we're in. The interior of Caldron's ship was nothing like Rayan expected. It wasn't military grade, and it sure wasn't corporate polished. The lights were low, ambient, glowing lines of pale blue illuminating the walls and strips that pulsed gently with the hum of hidden engines. Everything smelled of coolant, steel, and old smoke. The ship was tight, efficient, modified. You built this yourself? Rayan asked as they stepped through the lower corridor. Caldron didn't turn. Mostly. What I couldn't build, I stole. What I couldn't steal, I salvaged. Lisa stuck close to Naira, her fingers curled in the woman's sleeve. Her wide eyes scanned every vent, cable, and data node they passed. Curious. Quiet. Caldron gestured them into a narrow chamber, half cockpit, half data hub. A curved screen covered one wall, showing orbital feeds, bounty boards, and encrypted chatter scrolling in real time. Close the hatch, he said. Naira didn't hesitate. The door hissed shut, sealing them inside. Then Caldron tapped a line of code into the console, and a massive image populated the screen. A face. Not Lisa's. But close. Corporate bounty, he said flatly. Issued 2 months ago. No name. No age. Just this. He pointed to the glowing green eyes. Alive, 10 million credits. Dead 5. Rayan felt his stomach twist. They want her erased. No, Caldron corrected. They want her controlled. Killing's just a backup option. Lisa shrank behind Naira's leg. I didn't ask to be made. Caldron's expression didn't soften, but his voice lost its edge. That's not your fault, kid. But you're now the most valuable piece of forbidden tech in 5 sectors. Anyone with access to a private fleet will come hunting if they sniff the trail. Naira growled, low in her throat. Let them come. Rayan stepped closer to the screen. Is there anyone who'd help us? Caldron tapped the console again. A new image replaced the bounty feed, a station, orbital, half-dead, floating above a red gas giant. Tether point 5. Fringe colony, mostly scavengers and exiles. No corporate jurisdiction. I know someone there. Name's Veda. She used to work Edenfall's lab routes before she turned ghost. Naira crossed her arms. You trust her? I trust her to hate the core more than she likes profit, Caldron said. And she's the only one who might know how to mask a genetic profile like hers. Lisa spoke up, voice barely above a whisper. Do I have to hide forever? No, Naira said, crouching beside her. But until we can fight back, you survive. That's how we win. Rayan turned to Caldron. How soon can you take us? The smuggler cracked his neck. Already warming the core. We'll burn low through the system, stay off the registry net. But once we hit orbit, there's no turning back. Rayan glanced at Naira. Then at Lisa. Good, he said. Because I'm done hiding. The engines vibrated beneath their feet as Caldron's ship broke atmosphere. Rayan sat strapped into the co-pilot seat, one hand on the NAV panel, the other gripping the harness tight enough to turn his knuckles white. The hull groaned under the stress of ascent, pressure harmonics shaking every bolt in the deck plates. Behind them, Naira sat with Lisa curled up beside her, one protective arm wrapped around the girl. Naira hadn't said a word since liftoff, but her claws were half extended, and her eyes didn't blink once. They all felt it. They weren't alone. Caldron cursed under his breath. "We've got an active ping on our tail. Came in low. Too fast for anything natural." Rayan checked the scanners. "Velocity spike, above orbital speed. Not a ship. Clustered returns, multiple." Caldron snarled, jamming his hands against the manual throttle. "It's a drone swarm. Corp grade. Someone traced the beacon." Rayan's stomach sank. "They weren't trying to rescue us. They were waiting to track us." Naira unstrapped with a fluid twist, already crossing the cabin toward the weapons panel. "How many?" Caldron tapped the display. "At least 12. Probably more inbound." The ship shuddered. A proximity alert screamed. Rayan barely had time to grab the side rail before something struck them. A blast of EMP surge that momentarily flickered the lights and sent the screens into static chaos. "We're hit!" Caldron barked. "No critical systems down, but if that shield coil burns out again, we'll drop like a stone." Naira snarled. "Then we fight before we fall." Rayan activated the defense grid. "I can give you external turrets, mid-range cannons, and one tracking flak launcher. But we're not designed for a dogfight." Naira grinned, baring her teeth. "Good thing I'm not designed to lose." She vanished down the maintenance ladder to the lower turret ring. Outside, the stars lit with sudden movement, pinpricks of silver death spiraling in perfect corporate formation. The first drone dived low across their port side, a pulse beam skimming so close Rayan felt the heat against his chest. Naira's voice crackled in over the calm. "First one down." A flash bloomed on the screen, an explosion where one drone had been, torn apart by a burst of flak. Caldron kept them spinning, his hands moving like a man who'd flown through worse. "We can't stay in orbit. We'll burn into fragments." Rayan's eyes darted across the console. "We drop to low-latitude drift, loop behind the moon's magnetic band, and slingshot into the tether corridor." "You think the ship can take that?" Rayan smirked, tension straining his jaw. "No. But I know we can." The hull screamed again as another drone exploded. A second wave came on fast, tighter, smarter. Lisa whimpered, ears pinned back. Then, her eyes glowed. She touched the ship's side. The lights pulsed. A drone spun out of formation, crashing into its neighbor mid-attack. Rayan blinked. "Did she just?" "She's talking to the machine." Naira breathed over calms. "She's inside it." Lisa's voice was soft. "I can make them hesitate. Not stop. But enough." Rayan swallowed hard and tapped into the NAV thrusters. "Then let's not waste time." With a blast of pressure and inertia, Caldron's ship dove into the curve of the moon. And behind them, the sky burned. The moment Caldron's ship broke through the magnetic distortion belt and into the orbit of Tether Point 5, the world turned gray. Not colorless, just worn. The station was a relic, spinning slowly over a dead gas giant like a scab that refused to fall off. Its hull was scorched and patched with mismatched alloys, the docking ports cluttered with jury-rigged airlocks and faded warning signs in at least 5 different dialects. Caldron leaned back from the controls, exhausted but focused. "She's still alive! Veda keeps the port running. Don't look threatening and they won't shoot first." Rayan glanced through the viewport. "I'm not sure I can look non-threatening after everything we've been through." Naira stepped forward, claws retracted, but her tail flicked warily behind her. "Doesn't matter how we look. It's what we're carrying." She glanced down at Lisa, who stood between them quietly, her fur matted from the flight, her glowing eyes dimmed but alert. She looked older already, and it hadn't even been a full day since the relay station. Rayan pulled his coat around his gear. "You said your contact used to work Edith Fall?" Caldron nodded. "Veda was one of their lead biochemists. Burned her file, erased her chip, walked away when they started erasing failures." "Failures like Lisa?" Rayan asked. "Exactly." The docking clamps engaged with a bone-jarring clang. The airlock rotated and clicked open with a hiss of stale, recycled air. Rayan took the lead, weapon holstered but hand ready. Naira followed close with Lisa's small hand in hers. Caldron pulled up the rear, one hand in his long coat, where Rayan knew a concealed weapon rested. Tether Point's interior was dim, flickering under failing fluorescent panels. Ducts lined the walls like the veins of a rusted beast, and the sound of boots echoed far longer than they should have in any safe port. A woman waited at the end of the corridor. Mid-40s. Lean frame, short silver hair, coat dusted in ash and heat seal residue. One eye glowed faintly, augmented. "Caldron," she said, her voice dry and unimpressed. "You look worse every time you crawl through my door." He smirked. "Keeps expectations low." Her gaze shifted to Rayan, then Naira, then finally landed on Lisa. The air changed. "That's her," Veda said, her voice barely a whisper now. "You brought her here?" "She's not what Edithfall built her to be," Rayan said quickly. "She's something else. Something they're terrified of." Veda slowly approached Lisa, crouching to meet her eyes. She didn't reach out. Just watched. "You're awake," she murmured. "That's not supposed to happen." "I wasn't supposed to survive," Lisa replied evenly. Veda stood. "Then you need to come with me. Right now." Rayan stepped between them. "Not until we know what's going on." Veda's voice turned cold. "You don't understand. If she interacted with the drones, if she altered them, then they've already pinged it back. Not to Edenfall." Naira's eyes narrowed. "Then who?" Veda stared at her. "To the architects. The ones who made Edenfall." For the first time in days, Rayan felt fear curl in his gut like ice. Veda led them deeper into Tether Point's underbelly, down a maintenance shaft sealed off from the public decks. Rayan's boots echoed against rusted grates, the air growing colder the further they descended. The lights flickered more often than they stayed on, but Lisa didn't seem bothered. She walked in step with Naira, her glowing green eyes absorbing the shadows like they were familiar. Rayan leaned close to Caldron. "You trust her?" Caldron gave a half shrug. "I trust she's too smart to lie outright." Veda finally stopped at a reinforced hatch. She ran her hand over a hidden panel, skin implant lighting up with a ciphered pulse. The door hissed open, revealing a vault-like room with insulated walls, consoles lining the far side, and a display screen that flickered to life the moment they entered. "I kept this here for years," Veda said as she sealed the door behind them. "Just in case the project ever crawled back out of its grave." The screen displayed a symbol, an eclipse within a hexagon, surrounded by tiny orbiting glyphs. "The architects," she said, nodding toward it. "Not a faction. Not a company. A council of off-grid minds centuries old. They built Edithfall, yes, but it wasn't about creating weapons. That was a side effect." Rayan frowned. "Then what was it about?" Veda turned, her face grim. "Terraforming. Not just terrain, species. They didn't want to adapt planets to suit people. They wanted to adapt people to suit planets." Naira's ears twitched. "That's why she can manipulate her environment." Veda nodded. Edenfall's original design was to seed advanced hybrid lifeforms across dead colonies. Not just to survive, but to bond with planetary ecosystems. Build harmony. Rayan looked down at Lisa. "But it didn't go that way." Veda tapped a few keys, and old logs began to scroll across the screen. Beta Unit L0Y5A exceeded neural learning thresholds at 700%. Subject initiated non-authorized contact with atmospheric biomatrix simulation. Flagged, autonomous behavior. Termination scheduled. "She wasn't broken," Veda said. "She was successful. Too successful. They tried to kill me," Lisa whispered. "Because I didn't need them anymore." Naira stepped beside her, crouching low. "They feared you because you didn't obey." "They feared her," Veda said, "because she didn't belong to them." Rayan stepped forward, fists clenched. "So why keep this secret? Why not destroy the records? Let her disappear? Because now you understand, Veda said. They're not just hunting a lost asset. Lisa is proof that Edifall succeeded. Proof that the architects can rewrite evolution itself. If that gets out, every sovereign world in the quadrant will want her. Not to save her. To copy her. Or to destroy her before someone else does. A long silence followed. Caldron broke it. So what's the play? Veda looked at them, at Lisa. You run. And you don't stop. Until she decides what she wants to be. Rayan turned to Lisa. You heard her. This isn't just about escape anymore. Lisa stared at the screen, the symbol glowing like a buried star. Then she said quietly, Then I want to learn to fight. Naira smiled. Rayan nodded once. Then we'll teach you. They didn't hear the ship arrive. That was the first warning. Tether Point 5 had sensors tuned to every kind of threat. Long-range pings, radiation bursts, even silent heat trails. But this one slipped past all of them, undetected, like it had been waiting just outside the edge of reality. Veda stood in the control room, pale under the flickering lights. Something's here. Caldron was already moving, snapping open a weapons locker and tossing Rayan a pulse rifle. No docking request. No transponder. It's them. Rayan checked the magazine. You think it's a kill team? No, Veda whispered. Worse. From the viewport above Tether Point's central hub, they watched as a vessel slid into view, black, smooth, featureless. It didn't dock. It just opened. The ramp extended with a slow grace, and out of the hull walked a figure. Not armored. Not armed. Human in shape but off. She wore a coat like liquid steel, her eyes too perfect, her steps too quiet. Her face was beautiful, symmetrical, so much so that it seemed sculpted, not born. Her hair shimmered like thread-thin wires, and when she looked up at the station's cameras, everyone watching felt it. She's not real, Naira said. No, Veda agreed. She's an Envu. Proxy body. One of their deep constructs. Meaning? Rayan asked. She's not here to kill us, Veda said grimly. She's here to talk. Rayan exhaled. I hate that more. The Envoy entered the station's main corridor without resistance. None of the systems even tried to stop her. Where she walked, the lights adjusted, not flickering, but responding like the station knew her. Welcomed her. Let me speak to the child. Her voice rang through the internal speakers, smooth and utterly without accent. We seek no harm. Caldron spat. That's a lie. Naira had her blades drawn, eyes glowing. I'll carve through her like bone if she gets near Lisa. Lisa, to everyone's surprise, stood quietly by the wall. Watching. Listening. She didn't look afraid. She's not speaking to the station, the girl said softly. She's speaking to me. Rayan moved to her side. You don't have to answer. Lisa shook her head. I already did. Outside the control room, the corridor doors parted with a hiss, and the envoy stepped inside. Everyone raised weapons, but she didn't react. Didn't even flinch. Her gaze locked onto Lisa. You are the seed, she said. The only one that bloomed without control. Lisa stared back, unblinking. You left me in a box. You were not ready, the envoy replied. Lisa's fists clenched. I was alive. Something flickered behind the envoy's eyes. Not emotion. Code. Come with me, she said. And you will never be hunted again. No, Lisa said flatly. I'll never be owned again. The lights dimmed. The envoy took one step forward. And Naira leapt. Naira struck like lightning, her claws a blur of silver arcs. She aimed for the envoy's throat, heart, and temple in a single sweeping motion designed to incapacitate even a heavily armored soldier. But the envoy didn't dodge. She didn't need to. Naira's claws met invisible resistance, air that had hardened into something impossible. Her first strike rebounded with a snap of force, sending shockwaves up her arms. The second landed with a screech of bending physics, like slicing through frozen mercury. The third caught. The envoy's hand snapped up and closed around Naira's wrist. Calm. Effortless. You are flesh, the envoy said quietly. But she is legacy. Naira twisted her body, flipped backward, and landed in a crouch. Her wrist was scorched, burned just from the contact. Rayan raised his rifle and fired. The pulse round struck center mass, but rippled like light through water. The envoy didn't stagger. She didn't even blink. Caldron cursed and unloaded his sidearm at her back. Useless. The envoy walked forward. You do not understand, she said, turning her gaze to Lisa again. You were made for resonance. For synthesis. You are incomplete without the keys we hold. Lisa stepped forward, her voice a whisper of fury. No. I'm not incomplete. The envoy tilted her head. Then show me. Lisa raised her hand. The lights didn't flicker. They bent. They twisted. The air thickened. Circuits in the wall sparked and bloomed with strange flowers of data, code visualized, leaking out in tendrils of light and sound. The envoy paused. Lisa's eyes glowed white now, not green. Something in the station responded. A deep rumble. An ancient hum in the walls. Veda gasped. She's activating the buried systems, ones we couldn't touch. Architect code. Lisa took another step. You don't own me, she said. I'm not your seed. I'm not your legacy. I'm your undoing. With a shout, she slammed both palms into the floor. The envoy staggered. For the first time, she reacted. Her image fractured, flickering, half her face pixelating before snapping back into form. The ripples of Lisa's energy had struck something beneath the surface of reality itself. You cannot sever what you are, the envoy hissed. I can rewrite it, Lisa answered. The lights blew out. The walls screamed. And the envoy vanished, as if ripped backward into the void by a hook none of them could see. Silence returned. Lisa stood in the center of the room, her small shoulders shaking, not with fear, but power still settling inside her. Rayan approached slowly. Lisa, what did you do? She turned to him, calm. I told her the truth. The control room was silent but for the soft hiss of a cooling conduit and the fading echo of Lisa's pulse. No alarms. No envys. Just a lingering tremble of something that had almost gone too far to stop. Naira knelt by Lisa, examining her hands. You're not burned. But something inside you changed. Lisa nodded slowly. I felt like I could see everything. Not just here, but through the ship. Through the station. I saw the paths they left behind. The things they built inside me. I followed it back. Rayan exchanged a glance with Caldron. Followed it where? Lisa's voice was distant. To others like me. I wasn't the only one. Veda's head snapped up. Wait. You sensed others? Lisa looked at her. I didn't just sense them. I heard them. They're sleeping. Hidden. Some in cryo, some stored inside constructs. One is trapped inside a medical drone, somewhere in the derelict belt. Veda stepped closer, eyes wide. That means the architects didn't abandon Edenfall, they expanded it. Quietly. Across forgotten sectors. Rayan frowned. And they've kept it buried. Waiting for someone to trigger the signal. Caldron cursed under his breath. And Lisa just was the signal. Naira stood slowly. Then the only way to protect her is to find the others. Before the architects do. No, Veda said. It's more than that. She walked to her console and tapped in a string of encrypted commands. A map unfurled on the screen, half-charted systems, redacted jump routes, half-erased Edenfall outposts. You don't protect her by running, Veda said. You protect her by waking them up. All of them. Rayan stared at the map, its countless blinking points. You want us to start a rebellion. Veda gave a tight nod. I want you to give the architects what they fear most, a choice they can't control. Lisa touched the screen. One point lit brighter than the others. That's the one in the derelict belt. She's scared. But strong. Naira rested a hand on Lisa's shoulder. Then we go there next. Rayan looked at Caldron. Think your ship can handle another run? Caldron smirked, pulling out a sig-stick. I didn't fix the hyperdrive to retire. Rayan turned to Lisa, kneeling beside her. You ready for this? Lisa nodded. I'm not a child anymore. No, Naira said, voice soft with pride. You're the future. The derelict belt shimmered like broken glass in the void, debris and dormant satellites drifting in a slow, ancient dance. Caldron's ship coasted between them with its engines cold, cloaked in static silence. Inside, tension brewed like thunder. This is the signal source, Rayan confirmed, watching the readout. The sleeper unit's buried inside that mining wreck. But there's a pulse. Someone else is already here. Veda's voice crackled over comms from the ship's medbay, where she monitored systems. It's a relay node. Old architect tech. It's scanning the sleeper, or trying to. Trap. Caldron muttered. Knew it. Naira stood near the hatch, blades on her back, crouched and calm. Then we spring it fast. Rayan turned to Lisa. Can you reach her? The other child? Lisa had her eyes closed. Her fur glowed faintly with inner light. She's scared. Confused. They've been showing her things, false memories. But I can still reach her. She opened her eyes. I will reach her. The descent into the wreck was fast, dirty, and violent. Blaster fire raked the hull as soon as they landed, automated sentry drones, activated by the architect signal. Naira moved like fire through the corridors, shredding the machines with a fury Rayan had only seen once before. They breached the cryochamber. Inside, a small containment pod glowing dimly. Within it floated a girl, no older than Lisa, with silver hair and faint scars lining her arms. Her vitals were weak. Neural ports blinked red. They're rewriting her, Veda whispered through the comm. No, Lisa said. Not anymore. She reached out and touched the pod. The light flared. For a moment, the station shook, not from weapons, not from damage, but from inside. As if something ancient was waking up. Architect systems across the wreck lit up, surged, then died. The girl's eyes opened. She took a single breath and whispered. Who am I? You're free now, Lisa said, smiling. And you get to choose. They left the wreck behind, 2 children where there had been one, both no longer afraid. As Caldron's ship broke free from the belt and jumped to dark space, Rayan stood beside the viewport, watching stars stretch into lines. Where to now? Caldron asked from the cockpit. Rayan looked back at the girls. Lisa sat beside the silver-haired one, teaching her how to trace constellations. We go find the rest. And then what? Naira asked softly. Rayan smiled faintly. Then we make sure no one ever uses them again. In the darkness of space, a new kind of light was rising, not from weapons, not from war, but from the power of choice. A scattered legacy, now bound not by code, but by hope. And it had only just begun.